Today's question is about multitasking versus multithreading. What are the differences and do they matter? Oh boy. Put your internet shields on because I'm going to get a little spicy in this video. Corvo asks, could you make a standalone video explaining the difference between multitasking versus multithreading? I'm very confused between your suggestions, me, and Hardware Unboxed because Steve at Hardware Unboxed says only the total compute performance matters, even if it's just 4 cores, while your suggestion is even if a 6 core is slower in total compute performance, it will still be better. Today's video is brought to you by eWin Racing, the best source for gaming chairs and desks for those long gaming sessions. We have a playlist of our eWin chair and desk videos linked in the video description below. Save 30% off of everything using the discount code TechDeals. More details at the end of the video. Well, I didn't make a 4-core versus 6-core comparison. Steve over at Hardware Unboxed and I have actually done a video and a live stream together. I have talked to him both publicly and privately. He is not an idiot. He has worked very hard to get his YouTube channel to where it is, and he knows a lot of things. I would say my biggest constructive feedback to Steve would be he doesn't know where his knowledge ends. And there's nothing more dangerous than thinking your knowledge, it's like, well, I know all of this, so I must know more. Because what happens is you carry that to a spot that your knowledge doesn't support. Some of that is youth. He's quite a bit younger than I am. Some of that is... yeah, that's mostly youth. I was probably the same way when I was younger as well. I am very much aware of my limitations as I've gotten older. I'm very much aware that I don't know nearly as much as I used to think I do. My limitations are vast and extensive. Whenever somebody asks me technical questions about chips, I point them to Dr. Ian Cuttress at Tech Potato. When somebody asks me about servers, data centers, high-end systems, I point them to Wendell at Level 1 Techs. If somebody wants to know about 40 gigabit networking and making 7 gamers, actually did a 10 gamer on 1 CPU, go talk to Linus. He's become an expert at that. The funny thing about Linus is I don't think Linus's regular tech reviews over the past few years have actually been that good. I don't think the benchmarks are great. I think they kind of coasted on that. But boy, they do some of the most outlandish, crazy videos. They're massive server arrays. They're server setup videos. Their weird configurations are pretty cool. It's entertainment. A lot of what they've gone to is entertainment. I remember watching Linus when he was unboxing AMD CPUs with a box cutter in the parking lot of NCIX. It's been a long time. So, and of course, then there's Steve Burke at Gamers Nexus, who I actually do respect quite a bit, although I do think he loves his charts and data just a little bit too much. Because what isn't said in them often enough is, yes, this CPU is 8% faster than that one, but they're both over 200 frames a second, so like, who cares? I know somebody probably cares, but it's like, oh my goodness, charts. There's a lot of charts in those videos. Although I do love his roasting of NVIDIA on the 4060 Ti, because that really was pretty hot trash. So that was pretty good. So, only total compute performance matters, at least, now, I haven't talked to Steve over at Hardware Unboxed in a while. Corvo says, Steve claims that only total compute performance matters. It depends. There are circumstances where that is a true statement. And there are circumstances where it is not a true statement. Like so many things in life, the devil is in the details. Where this started, where this whole riff happened, is I made a comment about the fact that I found the Ryzen 5, I can't even remember at this point. It was either the Ryzen 5 3600X or the Ryzen 5 5600X was stupid and dumb when the Ryzen 7 2700X was such a much better deal. Well, Twitter with 140 characters, yes, okay, you could do it was 280 and now you can do longer if you're a blue subscriber. This was a couple years ago. Twitter does not leave room for nuance. And the problem is when you're having a public conversation instead of a private one, which this should have been a private conversation, Now, I've had other content creators kindly nudge me and say, are you sure? I saw you said this. That seems a little bit off. Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more. I have had other content creators send me private messages and say, you might want to check that. And if I've been wrong, I'm happy to give them credit and say, thank you so much to such and such for giving me a heads up. But when you're going to create a public Twitter feud fight for the drama points, well, that's an unpleasant circumstance. So what happened is I made some comment, and it wasn't even to him, it was just in general, about the fact that I would buy a Ryzen 7 2700X over a Ryzen 5 3600X or 5600X. Now, I actually don't think the 3600X is faster in overall compute than a 2700X, but a 5600X is if you're running Cinebench, if you're running one task. Now, let's rewind a second, because I know what you're asking, and I will get to it, but I also know what you're asking, which is what's going on with the complaint with Hardware Unboxed, or at least that's what I'm choosing to run with. Multitasking. Multitasking is running more than one program at a time. Unique, separate programs. For example, gaming, watching YouTube videos, listening to music. Although you wouldn't watch videos and listen to music probably. Okay, gaming, live streaming, engaging in chat. Or editing a video in Premiere while listening to music and having Discord open. These are separate and distinct applications and programs. The memory space, the on-chip cache, the DRAM bandwidth on the system, the PCI Express bandwidth, storage access is unique between those programs. Adobe Premiere Pro, Discord, Chrome, Firefox, OBS, a game. These things do not cooperate. They don't know about each other's existence. They don't know what each other are doing. And they could each ask for the same resources at the same time. Windows' job, or Linux or Mac OS, doesn't really matter. They're all preemptive multitasking OSs now. So the operating system's job is to go, oh, well, Premiere wants to access drive D. But the game wants to access drive D. Well, they can't both do it at the same time. They basically can. I mean, they can go into a queue and it's very, very responsive. The fact of the matter is it does kind of go in sequential order. There's only so much bandwidth and there's only so many interrupt requests on the PCI Express bus. There's only so much DRAM bandwidth. If Adobe wants all of your DDR4 or DDR5 RAM bandwidth, and then OBS is trying to use it, and then NVIDIA Shadowplay is capturing something, and then Chrome is updating something in the background, and then you've got game launchers in the bottom, maybe Steam's down there, and it just decided, hey, this is a perfectly good idea to start updating a game. I'll go check for game updates. Never mind that you're doing other stuff with your computer. None of these things cooperate, and they all compete with system resources. That's multitasking. Each CPU core has a pipeline. Hyper-threaded CPUs, or SMT in the case of AMD, have essentially a partial core, not a real execution unit, but they can sort of schedule two threads at the same time so that they can do prefetch. They can start pulling data from memory, pulling data from RAM, or pulling data from the on-chip cache, and so they can fill up their pipeline more effectively. That's why some applications use hyper-threading very well, and some applications don't use it at all. Games especially tend to be pretty poor at using it. So your CPU has to respond to all these different requests that are competing with each other. Having more cores, even if they're slower, can actually make your system faster. Let me give you an analogy that might be really simple and easy to understand now that I've given you the complicated version. Hard drives. You want to copy files from drive A to drive B. These are hard drives, not SSDs. These hard drives have a transfer rate of 100 megabytes per second. If you're doing nothing else in your system, the files from drive A move to drive B at 100 megs per second, assuming no other bottlenecks in the system. Bob's your uncle. But you have a hard drive C, and you've decided that while that file transfer is taking place, you're going to move some files from hard drive C to drive B. Anybody who has tried this with hard drives will tell you, wait your turn. Don't try to do those at the same time. Your transfer rate on both tasks will go right into the toilet. Now, CPUs are obviously faster than hard drives. Multitasking and task switching are faster. A simple analogy would be SSDs would do this better than hard drives would. Copying files from two different SSDs to a single SSD would be way, way better than going from two hard drives to one hard drive. However, try it sometime on a large file transfer. If you have enough SSDs to do this, try large file copies from two different SSDs to a single SSD. Time it. Then do one by itself after you've given the drive time to rest and the SLC cache to flush, and then do the other drive and time it. Obviously, it depends on the file size, file transfer, etc., how much SLC cache the drives have, how good the drives are. I mean, some drives are better than others. But in general, you will find that doing those sequentially rather than trying to multitask them goes much faster. The CPU is the same way. You have 18 different programs all trying to access system resources. And they're different resources too, because one program needs more DRAM, one program needs more storage access, one program needs more graphics card access through the PCI Express bus. One program's trying to access a USB thing. You're copying files. The background task is trying to update. All of these things start hitting internal conflicts, which makes everything run a little bit slower. More cores and more system resources can help. It's not an end-all be-all fix. You are limited by various bus speeds and connections within your machine. But the benefit to more cores is that if you're using 6 cores on a 6-thread chip, any additional CPU demand, no matter how fast your 6 cores are, will put an interrupt in there and will stop a task that your CPU is doing. Anything, background game update, listening to music, Discord, web browsers, anything. If you're playing a game that is using 6 cores, and you do something else, there's an interrupt in there somewhere. What do you get? A 1% low frame time hitch. Not always. It depends upon the circumstances, but you can and will get those. On a slower 8-core chip, say a Ryzen 7 2700X, your overall frame rate, your average frame rate, will be lower than a 3600X or 5600X. But your 1% lows may very well be better. Input lag will be better. Because if you're playing a game that only needs 6 cores on an 8-core chip, then the minute something else wants to do something, there are free CPU resources sitting there idly waiting for something to do. On a 6-core chip, those extra cores may give you great performance. The faster cores, but fewer of them, give you great gaming performance. But 100% of them are being used for gaming, and you have nothing left for anything else without interrupting the game flow. So faster averages, but more microstutter, which is why I have been on this more core bent for several years now, because I don't think, now this is somewhat of an opinion, I'll grant that, you could disagree with me, it's okay. I am of the opinion that 80 frames per second that never dips below 60, so an average of 80 and a 1% low of 60, is a superior gaming experience than 100 frames per second that dips to 40. 80 average, 61%, 100 average, 41%. Now, not all the time, not every game, depends on what you're doing. Here's another point to consider. At the time I gave that advice, the Ryzen 7 2700X had been on sale for about $150. The 3600X and the 5600X launched for $250 to $300. So the 8-core chip was $100 cheaper, installed in cheaper B450 boards. You didn't need a 500 series board. Okay, you don't need a 500 series board, but there were still new in-box 400 series boards for like $79. So you could buy a Ryzen 7 2700X for $150. It came with a cooler, a really nice one, the Wraith Prism RGB hefty cooler, 4 direct contact heat pipes, and it installed in $80 motherboards. Not that I recommended $80 boards. If you could spend $100, $120, it'd be better. MSI B450 Tomahawk looking at you. Or you could spend $250, $120 to $150 on a B550 board. You get a small dinky cooler in the box. And you get higher average frame rates by 20-ish%, but crappier 1% lows. Man, that is a long explanation that not nearly enough people are going to listen to. I really need to make shorter explanations. Multithreading is really simple. One task running at maximum speed using all your available threads. Cinebench. Cinebench is multithreading to a T. That is basically taking all available compute resources to do one thing. Whether you have 6 really fast cores, 8 medium-sized cores, or 12 slow cores, Cinebench does not care. Cinebench will divide your workload up to 64 cores if you have them. You could have 128 1 gigahertz cores, and it would just divide the workload up into 128 chunks, and each one would be slow, but the overall workload would still be impressive. Or you could have a single 1 core that runs at 25 gigahertz. I mean, those don't exist, but assuming you had a single core that ran at 25 gigahertz, Cinebench would simply use that to its maximum potential. Multi-threading is nice. Multitasking is, in my opinion, the more important trait. And it's one of the reasons why, despite how fast the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D is, 8 cores for $450? Yuck. That's why I didn't recommend it. Today, for $450, you have the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D. For $450. For $100 more, you can buy an i9 13900K with 24 cores and 32 threads. But I saw a benchmark that showed the 7800X 3D was the fastest gaming CPU in the world. Yeah, at 1080p with an RTX 4090, which is dumb. If you're playing at 1080p and you buy a 4090, good for you, man. Sure. 1440p and 4K, don't care. The differences between those are marginal. And the truth is, an i9 13900K is not any faster in games, except for a small clock speed boost, than an i5 13600K. But the i9 comes with 10 more cores, and most importantly, 2 more P cores, and 10% more clock speed, 5.5 versus roughly 5.0, although a little bit higher out of the box. It's overclockable. So for less than twice the price, you get the best of the platform, which will also hold its value really well because the top end of any platform tends to do pretty well because Intel doesn't want to support CPUs for 4 years. Shame on you, Intel. That sucks. But context. The Ryzen 7 2700X was awesome because A, it was cheap, B, it installed in cheaper boards, and C, it provided smoother, if not epic, fast gameplay. 6 cores? AMD is still trying to sell 6 cores for $300 in 2023. Good God. And they're trying to sell... The 7700X isn't too bad at $300. At $300, I'm okay with it. It's not the end of the world. $300 gets you 8 cores, the 7700X, but most importantly, it gets you the AM5 socket, which gives you future upgrades, Zen 5, Zen 6, etc. No matter how fast a 7800X 3D is today, Zen 5 is going to beat it. Zen 6 is going to beat it. So it is what it is. Intel has no upgrade path, so that's its own issue. But you get 14 cores for $300. They don't matter until the day they do. And by the time you've bought motherboard, RAM, storage, graphics card, power supply, case, an extra $50 to $100 to buy a better chip. Like right now, right this minute, the last of the AM4 chips, the Ryzen 5 5600 is about $125 on Newegg. The Ryzen 7 5700X is about $175. Now, from a strictly dollar per unit performance point of view, okay, the 5600 is probably a better deal, but not by much. And I would remind you that for $50, you get higher clock speeds because the X chip's a little bit faster out of the box than the non-X chip. Yeah, they're overclockable, but it's nice to just not have to worry about it. Still 65-watt TDP, although it runs higher than that because TDP doesn't mean what everybody thinks it does. So you get 8 cores instead of 6. for $50 and your platform lasts at least another year and you get smoother multitasking and a little bit extra oomph for those odd times you need it. It's not essential. I understand people are on a budget, but if you're really on a budget, what you should buy is the $85 Ryzen 5 5500. Now it's slower. It has PCI Express Gen 3 instead of 4 and a couple of other things, but it's pretty close. The differences are pretty minor. So, if you're going to go to the bottom, go to $84. Holy smokes. 6 cores, 12 threads? Okay, I love 6 cores, 12 threads for $84, but for $300, I think it's dumb. Have I answered your question, Corvo? I think I took off and nuked that question from orbit. I think the horse is dead, Jim. There's more to gaming performance and computer performance than average frame rates. And there's more to performance than having clean test benches where you press F5 or you run scripted benchmarks. The i3-12100F will run almost any current scripted benchmark on a clean test bench. I know, I have one. $58. Holy smokes. The i3-12100, 4 cores, 8 threads, will run almost any benchmark on its own well enough to look good on a benchmark chart. Having used that machine, did a full install Windows, installed games, played games, I spent several days with it. Not if I don't have to. Holy freaking smokes. The minute you open multiple windows, the minute more than one thing's going on, the minute Windows Update plus game updates are trying to happen, the machine slows to a crawl. It's fine so long as you never break the resource barriers that chip has. And I really do think people should buy computers to last more than 1 or 2 years. And if you're buying a computer in 2019, 2020, 8 cores was the way to go. 6 for ultra budget, but 8 was the way to go. Today, I'm not excited about 8 cores at all. I think the 8-core era, for Pete's sakes, we got $300 8-core chips back in 2017. That was 6 years ago. Let's get on with it now. We've got 16 and 24-core chips. 12 is a nice round number. I think the 14 on the 13600K is a nice round number. I look forward to reading the comment section of this. If you got to this point, 3 gold stars for all of you. This might or might not be the smartest video I do all week. eWin Racing has a wide selection of chairs to fit all shapes and sizes of gamers, ranging from petite to cuddly. They have something for every type of gamer. Not just sizes, but colors and material options as well, including red, blue, purple, pink, orange, and more, plus cloth and leather choices. We have over half a dozen chair and desk videos in a playlist down in the video description below. We also have a very special offer just for Tech Deals viewers. Save 30% off of everything using discount code TechDeals using our link in the video description. We have used eWin gaming chairs for 3 years in our office, sitting on them for up to 8-hour marathon live streams. They are very comfortable, and we are happy to work with eWin to bring you this special discount and recommend eWin for all of your gaming chair and desk needs.